All right, how are we all? It's good to be back. It is good to be back on a live stream on this channel. Hope all is good. Well, of course, you'll get more of these. You'll of course get more of these coming back. Now the season is upon us. And it is because the season is upon us, ladies and gentlemen, that Acun has called a Q&A. A Q&A in which I was in attendance and was nowhere near as bad as the last one was. Nowhere near. So, what I thought I'd do is sit down and talk about it, talk you through my thoughts while we've got this time. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. Let's start off by saying straight away, no questions were vetted or anything like that before the event. You turned up, you put your hand up and you asked whatever you wanted to ask. Acun answered anything and everything. So in his opening remarks, he said he's happy to be here. He's not too bothered about the results of the friendlies because they don't mean anything, but even then the results weren't great. He did go on to say later he maybe wouldn't have played the Fiorentina game because we played Newcastle as well and Fenerbahçe. So the way he said he'd have done it if it was up to him was sort of a good one. So we played two good teams in Fenerbahçe and Newcastle, as he ranked them. So he'd have played them, then two medium teams, as he called them. So that would have been sort of a repeat of another game like Cash and Pasha and what have you, and then maybe one or two not so good teams. And we played the not so good friendly and we lost it. So whatever. He gave us a little bit of a Fenerbahçe ramble. So I'll summarise that for you here. Fenerbahçe. So he said they've not won a championship. They've not won the Turkish Super League in 6 years. And as a president, because it's all elections over there, that's not... It's difficult to get re-elected after that. So the president, Ali Koç, said during the elections, Acun, be on my team because he's a personal friend and help win this election and we'll win this together. They won 60% of the vote to the other 40 for the runner-up. And Acun is now vice president at Fenerbahçe, which he's described as he is like the head of football. He spends a lot of time with the players and he describes himself as like a brother to the players because of his role. He said he went to all the Fenerbahçe games last year before he was vice president. And that won't change. He couldn't juggle getting to Fener games and our games. He only missed one home game last season because it was Eid, I think, at the end of Ramadan. So he said he did accept that he's busy and that Fener is extra work, but he says it was, quote, not a game changer. He went on to say later on, Fenerbahçe would only it would only take up another sort of 10-20% of his time. So no more than that, which I suppose is all right. And he says for a month before the Fenerbahçe qualifiers started, his focus was all Fenerbahçe because they wanted the signings they wanted them in before the not Conference League, Champions League qualifiers, which is fair. So that's the Fenerbahçe situation. Let's move on. In terms of the recruitment team, we'll go to next. He said the structure, there's Tan, Mertan, Mustafa, Berry, Aifa, a lot of those names you won't know, but I recognise Ifa, I know Mertan, Mustafa, Berry, Tan, obviously. And someone asked him about getting a director of football in. He said Berry Pardo is that director of football. So no need to worry about a director of football. That is sorted. We have one. I then asked him, this is my question. I asked him about the head of recruitment. Where I said, look, the way I phrased my question was, my question is just about the head of recruitment and how Lee Darnborough left. You said he was going to be replaced. How close is that replacement to coming in? And do you think not having someone in that role throughout the duration of the summer how do you think that's impacted the transfer business? He didn't really answer the second bit of the question. And I say by didn't really answer, he didn't answer. So he said that the Lee Darnborough's replacement, he did a little tribute to Lee Darnborough to start with. He said that the new head of recruitment is almost done. If not done, he's either about to start or has just started in his job, but hasn't been officially announced publicly. So they've done that. That's cool. They've put that aside. Good career. He's had a good career before. He's a good guy. He's in the post. Okay, that's fine. Cool. That is cool. Recruitment team out of the way. In terms of, I need a new banner here. No, I've clicked caps lock instead of A. Right, so in terms of fan relationships, he said, look, he said that his view is the fans have to know everything about the club. So he said, always go on holidays together. It won't change for the critics. He joked that the fire alarm was the right time at the last Q&A. And he said about Ryan Allsop later on, and in terms of what he said in that Q&A, that he accepts because Allsop wasn't in his plans. And as soon as he sacked Rosenior, Allsop was pretty much guaranteed to go. He was probably too transparent, and he accepts that, which is fine. But he says, yeah, he'll always keep us in the loop. So, cool. What we'll do actually is we'll talk about the goalkeeper situation. Now, the goalkeeper situation. He was asked about Ivor Panda and coming out. The question was, it was a weird question that he was asked by a member of the audience in terms of, was Panda just coming out of his box to help the other players out in terms of building from the back because the others aren't good enough yet and we need the new signings? Acun just basically had to explain in a very long-winded way that the goalkeeper coming out of his box is a key part of Tim Walter's philosophy and way of playing. He said for Allsop as well, he says he wasn't in the plans at the time of the last Q&A. It was a given that he was going to go, and he accepts that because Allsop was about to go, he was too transparent. Fine. That's fine. Okay. In terms of player sales, he said in January we were at our financial peak because at that point the money from the Keane Lewis Potter sale was still in our 3-year FFP cycle. This year it isn't, and because of that, and we hadn't made any big sales since then, we had that wiggle room and we spent that wiggle room. And that was why we brought in these players and what have you. And he reiterated that Liam Rosenior was sacked due to style of play, not finishing position. And it wasn't just him saying that. He said it was a decision by the brain team as well. Brain team. And he said he'll never sell players unless they want to go, which he said the same. He said Greaves, he had a one-on-one conversation with Jacob Greaves and Greaves said, look, the dream is the Premier League. And Acun said, right, can you give us one more year? And Jacob Greaves says, well, my one more year was kind of last year. So Acun was like, all right, we'll let you go. And said to Tan, look, don't try and back him into a corner where we keep hold of him and then we get towards the end of the window and he's still here. And then because we've asked for too much money, all the clubs pull out and we've spent money preemptively getting his replacement sorted when he's not actually left. So don't back him into a corner. He said the same for Philogene. And he said the reason that Philogene went back to Aston Villa was because they had that good relationship that he personally had built with Aston Villa's owner, chief exec, recruitment guys, all that team, and that allowed that deal to go through. He said, we are strong enough to make recruitment, though, which is good. And we'll come on to recruitment in just a second, but we'll start with, is he selling the club first? He said very early on, he won't take the money and run, or words to that effect. He won't pick the money up and take it and spend it somewhere else. One, because that's not allowed. And two, it's passionate. He's passionate about this. It's not a business for him. So that's fine. When he was asked explicitly about the sale of the club, he said there's zero possibility to sell the club at the moment, and then whacked in the "I love you all" quote that he loves so much. So that's good. Dispelled that myth. Acun is not selling. Moving on. Signings. Acun said that, first of all, because of the Fenerbahçe stuff, he's only started getting involved in recruitment in the last 10 days. And he says he's having conversations with a young striker at the moment, which I believe is Tommy Conway from Bristol City. And he says the indications they're getting is that they can do this deal, but I don't see Tommy Conway coming here when he can go to Burnley. I'm going to be honest. So he said we will sign another goalkeeper, one, maybe two centre-backs. Well, definitely two centre-backs. Goalkeeper, two centre-backs. He said a number 6 is almost done. That one will be Oscar Zambrano, coming in from Ecuador. He did reference Oscar Zambrano's doping case, but he said they've spoken to him and they're confident he's innocent and they're willing to take the risk. My understanding was that case had been cleared, but okay, whatever. So that's 4 already. Another number 6 on top of Zambrano, which suggests to me that Seri might be going. I'm not going to say anything else on that because we'll talk about Seri. He was asked about Seri later on. One striker, he said, is almost done. Another young striker is in the works. So that's 7. He said one loan, that'll be Finn Burns, that was reported yesterday from Man City, one of the centre-backs. 1 loan and 4 non-loans are almost done. 4 loans after that. So, and I think I can find somewhere that he wrote they'll be in the next week. So that's okay. And he said most, if not all, of the permanent signings would be done before the 19th of August. From the 20th of August onwards, that is loans. He said in a separate question about Will Jarvis, he said, we need 3 wingers, which is promising. But that would suggest that we're going to get 3 wingers on loan. Yeah. Not sure how I feel about that one. But then that leaves us in a position where we're going to have 5 loans again. I'm not prepared to have my heart broken again. And someone put to him, actually, about the... where is it? Reliance on loan players. And he said, players will be owned by the 19th of August. Loans will be the last 10 days. So... Again, he dodged that question a bit in a roundabout way. Right, so let's talk then about player sales. He described Ryan Giles as our boy again. He says he likes him and what have you. And someone asked him about Giles specifically, said about the reports, quote, everybody can write the wrong things, when this person said it was from a Hull Live. But then what people on Twitter won't focus on is the fact that Acun also said he has a lot of respect for Mike and for Baz, and he works very closely with them, and he thinks they're fundamentally good people. So yeah, he said he's happy with Giles. He likes him. He's a nice lad, and Ryan Giles is a top bloke. Honestly, there are very, very few footballers as nice as Ryan Giles. Genuinely. And he says at this moment he's not leaving, which is good. On Seri, he was asked about Seri, and he dodged the question. Really, he says, by the looks of things, to me, doesn't really fit Tim Walter's system. So will he leave? Was the question Acun was asked. Acun just sort of really said he won't get involved in coaching matters, and he won't push for Tim Walter to play Jean-Michel Seri more. And Acun's saying that he's going to sign Tim another 2 number 6s. 2 number 6s plus Simons, who can play deeper and has played deeper this pre-season, would suggest to me that Jean-Michel Seri is on his way out. That's my guess. My reckoning is Seri will be leaving, which is a shame. But yeah. Acun also said as well that he wants 2 or 3 more wide players because wide players get injured a lot. I'm just flicking through. Oh, this is a good question actually. Someone asked. I'm just flicking through Twitter, and someone said, "What a question!" So I don't know what question it is. Returning loan players, if they were deemed not good enough last season, why are they good enough now? He basically said, well, he couldn't answer it really, and just sort of went on a bit of a tangent. So he said in the last 2 days he's been in talks with a striker. He's optimistic about signing him as another Delap, a central midfielder, a striker, and a centre-back this week. That was the quote I was looking for. But he was asked about like Longman and Oscar and what have you, and why they were deemed Simons, why they were deemed not good enough last season, but are deemed good enough now. And he basically said Oscar suits this manager's system, so he's back, and didn't answer anything else about the others, really. In terms of FFP, let's talk about FFP next. He gave a little FFP explainer. in response to one of the questions, asking about if Philogene and Greaves means we'll be able to spend money in January. And he says he will always, like, he'll never bankrupt the club or anything like that. And he's seen how teams who overspend can get punished and what have you. So he'll spend within means, but he'll spend as much as he can with FFP, and he's still optimistic about the transfer window and that we can get players in. He said about Charlie Hughes that they're putting money in, the City have put the money forward, and it's just a few little things they've got to sort out with Wigan, something along those lines. So that one looks like it is moving. And Baz Cooper did also tweet earlier that more signing news is coming, and it's just a case of when he so he said, we want him and we're willing to pay the money. Just some final details need sorting on Charlie Hughes. Okay, I think that is that covered. I'm going through this in whatever order I can. Signing players from the Turkish Super League. He said it's a good standard, it's a good market, but they all want too much money, so we're not going to sign any this window. So no players will come in from Turkey. Someone asked him about plans for the future as well, and he says he wants Tim Walter to be our long-term coach, and every year he wants us to fight for top six, which brings us into his expectations for the season, which he finished on. He said he wants us to be a top six candidate, and we are a top six candidate. Not sure. We've probably got the worst squad depth in the entire division at the minute. He says players are coming and will be strong when the signings are done. And if you look at the players we brought in last season, it's the exact same recruitment team that are making the signings this summer. So, in other words, don't stress. Back to FFP quickly, because I found the bit in my notes. My notes are all over the place. Writing shorthand is a nightmare because, well, I wasn't even writing shorthand, to be fair. When you're a journalist and you're sat in press conferences and stuff like that, the way you write is called shorthand. And basically, you have to write 100 words a minute, which is like, that's what you should be doing if you're writing shorthand properly. And my writing is terrible anyway. It's proper bloke's handwriting, as in just scroll it down, no one can read it. It's doctor's handwriting, where sort of like, as a doctor, you'll write paracetamol like that. That's what my writing's like, basically. And at the pharmacy, they can still read it. So I will answer your questions in chat in a minute. I just want to get through all this. FFP, he said, we are the number one club for sponsorship in the league. He won't bankrupt us, and he says the Premier League to Championship funding gap is just too big. So those rules need changing. But other than sponsorship, there's no other way we can generate FFP wiggle room apart from player sales. Okay, so let's have a look at Maribor and multi-club ownership. So he has bought Maribor in Slovenia. Said he was recommended to him by Alexander Sheferin, who is his friend and president of UEFA. And he said Shelburne didn't work because it's not a good enough standard when compared to the Championship. So there was no point in doing it. And he says it can be successful for us. Again, this was one he sort of dodged the question on, where they said, will you use Maribor as a way to get around FFP and sign a player for them, and then we get loaned in one of their players, and that player you've signed for them can replace them? He didn't really answer the question. He said an example is like Udinese and Watford. So they can be effective when there's talent out there. So we'll see. We will see. What should we go to next? Have we done selling the club? I think we have done selling the club. Zero possibility of him selling the club. We've been through that. Yeah. Head of recruitment, done. Goalkeeper situation, done. Fan relations, done. Relationships with parent clubs. Let's go with that. So, someone asked him, now Liam Rosenior has gone, will those relationships with clubs like Manchester City and Liverpool, who we got loan players from last season, still exist? Acun said Liam was, of course, helpful, especially with the Brits, because he's established in British football. But he said it wasn't just Liam involved in those meetings. Obviously, Liam was a big factor, but it wasn't just Liam involved. He was involved, Tan was involved, Berry was involved, etc. So Acun says in those meetings where Liam was involved, he and Tan have inherited those good relationships effectively. And those relationships will still exist and we can still get players on loan from those clubs. So what's next? Let's do the big news of the day, shall we? Will Jarvis back in from loan at Shelbourne, recalled. Yeah, recalled. So this was confirmed at about 10 o'clock this morning that we had recalled Will Jarvis from Shelbourne. The club statement read, young forward Will Jarvis has been recalled from his loan spell with League of Ireland Premier Division leaders Shelbourne. The 21-year-old netted 9 goals and contributed 6 assists in 30 appearances after rejoining Damien Duff's Dubliners in January, emerging as an integral player in table-topping Reds title bid. Jarvis scored and assisted twice in 12 games during his first spell at Talker Park in 2023, helping Shell secure a top 4 finish and UEFA Europa Conference League qualification. The youngster has made 4 appearances for the Tigers, 3 in the Championship and 1 in the EFL Cup, with his most recent outing coming away to Luton Town in May 2023. The Hull City Academy grad has enjoyed previous loan spells in non-league with hometown club York City and Scarborough Athletic, wearing promotion to the National League North in 2021-22. Like I say, that for me reeks of utter desperation because Abdush and Longman are both not fit, so we need wingers. Starting pair on Saturday, Will Jarvis and Sincere Hall. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. He said, Will Jarvis is a very important player. So interestingly, whilst slagging off the League of Ireland standard in one question, says in this one that Jarvis is a very important player and he's been watching him while he's been in Ireland and he's a good player and he's impressed and he's ready to come into the first team. So yeah. There's some nice little nuggets of information here, but there's also a lot of contradiction and not really answering questions. There was a nice moment where a young fan called Tommy asked him, he looked like about 8-9 years old, asked him about free Tiger travel for away games. So Acun says, just for you and someone in your family, tell me what away games you want to go to and I'll give you free Tiger travel to them. So that's quite nice. I don't see that coming off, to be honest, because I don't think they'll know anything about Tommy and what have you in terms of like seat numbers and membership numbers. But it's a nice offer to Acun from Acun, and if anyone can pick it up and sort it, Joe Clutterbrook can. Joe Clutterbrook is the man to sort all of that stuff out. What else have I got to go through? One more thing. the training ground. Tan gave us a little update on the proposed plans to put the training ground on Hull Fairland. The question was initially posed as Millhouse Woods Lane is a dump, and Alex Burgess chimed in and said, look, it's a bit deceiving from the outside, but in the inside, there has been some serious work doing to it. So it's not like a put-off for players when they get inside. Tan got a bit defensive about Millhouse Woods Lane, to be honest. So Tan says, in contrary to the man posing the question, Millhouse Woods Lane is not the worst training ground in the league. Acun said 18th. So Tan says they've spent £500,000 plus on pitches and the new dressing room there. It's in like a nice residential area, so it's a nice place for the players to come and it's out the way. And Tan likes it. But as for the new training ground, what they're focused on now they're not focusing too much on getting it on Hull Fairland, because the council have made very clear Hull Fair is a non-negotiable and that will stay there. And that means with the limited space that they'd have on that site, they're instead going to prioritise putting moving academy facilities away from Bishop Burton and to the stadium, and using that land they can take as an academy centre so that the young players can sort of train and play in view of the stadium, in the shadow of the stadium, basically. So that's how that will go. Yeah, so that's everything. A final little interesting point from me is when he was at the start, he said he made some notes on the plane and he was naming like some players. And he said players like Giles, our player, Oscar, our player, Abdush, our player, and then he chucked players like Stan Ashby and Will Jarvis in there, omitting players like Alfie Jones and Louis Coyle and Regan Slater. And we'll come back to that in a second. He also mentioned Dokan Sinek, and the audience sort of laughed. And Acun basically explained it as he used the words high quality. In terms of what? High quality time spent with the rehab coaches. Because he's the only coaches that have seen him in his entire time here, and he's into his third season. He said players have injuries and what have you, but Acun still wants Sinek to work out, but he needs to let it go. It's not going to work. It's simply not going to work. Never was ever going to work. Never will. He's a permanent sick note. Even when he's been out on loan, people have been saying, oh, it's just when he's here, it's that he don't want to play and stuff like that. It's not. When he's out on loan, he's missed every second or third game, should I say, with, like on transfer market, when you look, an unknown muscle injury or something like that. So the lad is just made of glass. So single paned as well. So Dokan Sinek, Acun still wants it to work. And then omitting players like Coyle and Jones and Slater and Fleming and what have you from that list. He said that when the team, he was talking about when he took over, when the team came up from League One, he said most of the players weren't good enough and they had to invest. But we sold Jacob Greaves for 15 million plus this year. So Keane Lewis Potter for 18 million 2 years ago. And players like Jones, Coyle, Slater are still crucial players for us now. So how do they feel watching that? Right, let's just have a look and see if I've missed anything that people are saying on here. Yeah, another weird one. He said about strikers, if Oscar wants to leave, he'll sign. If Oscar wants to leave, he'll sign 3. But if Oscar wants to stay, he'll sign 2. So, hinting that Oscar could yet leave again is a bit odd. Anyway. Where's the tweet? Yeah, there we go. Acun stating most players in League One squad not being good enough for where we are now, completely overlooking a number of those players are still key members of the squad. Alfie Jones, Louis Coyle, Sean McLaughlin, Brandon Fleming, Regan Slater will be thrilled. Yeah. Acun said, when we came, we had a fantastic team who won promotion from League One. They were very good, but not good enough to go into the Premier League. Most of them went to League One teams. Keane Lewis Potter and Jacob Greaves were fantastic, but I can't count too many players in the team of that level. They were shining for us. The rest were not good enough to play in the Championship, while Louis Coyle is still the captain. Alfie Jones was, well, he's the best defender we've got left at the club. Sean McLaughlin's played every minute of pre-season. Brandon Fleming's back in the fold. Yeah, strange. Anyway, chat. Let's see what some of you guys have been saying. Positive to say the least. I'll give my full thoughts on it at the end. Ashley fell asleep during it. Reckon the new head of recruitment's a qualified coach? I don't think so. I think you're being overly positive, to be honest. The guy talks nonsense. Fair. Some of it was nonsense. A cynic, namely. Greetings from Turkey. As a Fenerbahçe fan, I hope this year both Hull and Fenerbahçe will win the Championship. They deserve. Hull return to the Premier League. Thank you. Yeah, Kieran, I saw that on Twitter. When Baz gets told something from a trusted source, he's going to report it. And someone on Twitter suggested that Baz should just name his source. Journos never name sources because then you don't get anything from them again. Because chances are they're sacked after that because they've let quite exclusive information go. If I could pick one of the transfer rumours to come to fruition, what would it be? Well, Finn Burns is just about done. So I'd have to say Tommy Conway just because we need more strikers. Although Charlie Hughes, go. Transfer window, once it's finished, starting 11. Oh. Well, to answer your question, Chaz, Finn Burns is the player I think he's the Man City guy that you're on about, and that will get done. Panda in goal until he drops a few clangers and the new goalkeeper comes in to replace him. Whoever that may be. Drama or Coyle, toss up. Jones, Hughes, Giles, Zambrano, Simons or Slater, Abdush, 2 new wingers with Oscar or Tommy Conway up front. That's a guess. Watched on Tigers Plus, noted you had a front row seat. Yes, I did. Yes, I did have a front row seat. I packed up at 10 o'clock to get one. Thoughts on Uriel Felly? He'll never step foot in Hull. Never. That's my thoughts on Uriel Felly. Ömer looking good too. Acun was in high praise of Abdush Ömer. very, very, in very, very high praise of Abdush Ömer. Zambrano doping situation's bad, isn't it? Well, I think it's good that Acun referenced it, but they've said talking to him, they know he's clear, and well, they believe he's innocent. And like I said earlier in the stream, my belief was that Zambrano had been cleared, but I could be wrong. I was translating articles, and I'm not that fluent in Spanish. I can speak a bit of it, but I'm not that fluent to translate a whole article about a footballer doing drugs. Conway would be a real statement signing. It would. Could the young striker he's talking about be Stansfield? It could be, but I think it's more likely to be Tommy Conway at this stage. Although I'd love three strikers being Tommy Conway, Oscar Estupinian, Jay Stansfield. We would be cooking. Can we just cancel his loan if that's the case? That's an interesting question. I'm not sure if it's going to be a loan or a permanent yet. It's been reported in South American press that it's going to be a loan with an obligation if he hits certain criteria, which is quite risk-free. But to be honest, I can just see City going in as a perm, to be honest. I'll wait until it's reported in local press first, and then we'll see. Don't know if I've already talked about it, but Jarvis, I have just spoken about it, Jude. It reeks of desperation knowing we're not going to have a winger in by Saturday and both Abdush and Longman won't be fit. It reeks of desperation. That's that. That's that. All right. Good stuff, guys. There's everything you need to know. My thoughts on it. I'm not sure it's calmed anything. He's just said that players are going to come in. He's given us some little insights into what they're prioritising. 2 number 6s is interesting. 2 centre-backs as well. So that could hint that Andy Smith goes out on loan again. Other than that, I think I can see through some of it in terms of some question dodging and Dokan cynic and stuff like that. But on the whole, Acun is still definitely committed, and that can't be doubted. In terms of optimism for Saturday, still none. Still none. When will the away kit be out? I ain't got a clue. Probably before Plymouth. Yeah, all right, cool. That's everything, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on Friday night for the first preview of the season. Goodbye.